So as we were saying, because there is a balance remaining down, we will write balance carried down for the period and then we will carry it forward to the next period. Make sure that the date that we have here is for the next period, which would be the next month in this case. If the account closed off at 31st December, then it would be 1st January that the balance would be brought down. So this is a very important concept which we need to kind of like work towards, closing of the accounts. So so there are two aspects: closing of the accounts where there is no balance remaining, which would close off the account completely. There would be nothing to carry down. However, where there is a shortfall on either side of the account, we would then insert we would insert balance carried down and then carry forward that balance to the next period, which would be written as balance brought down. Short form for carried down and brought down can be CD and BD, which is universally understood as carried down and brought down. Now, if we were to understand what this balance is called a debit balance, because the credit side fell short of in the last period. So whatever balance we have is going to be a debit balance in this regard. So because it is a debtor account, we would expect it to be a debit balance because debtors are an asset. So for fixed assets, so all assets account, we would always have a debit balance, and for capital account and liabilities account, we would always have a credit balance. So here B Walters, if we made sales to B Walters of 51 and he made no payment till the end of the period, this means that there is a shortfall on the credit side. So we will put our balance carried down to close off the accounts for that month and then bring down the balance for to the next period. Now because B Walters is a debtor, it would have a debit balance. We can apply the same concepts to the accounts for creditors. So we will use uh, the same concept that we use in debtors. The only difference would be that instead of a debit balance, it would be a credit balance because creditors would always have, if a creditor has a balance, it would always be on the credit side. So in this regard, we can see here that E. Williams made we made two purchases from E. Williams, but we only made one a part payment of 100 euros. So just based on the totals, if we total both columns, we can see that there is a shortfall on the debit side. So we would do the same thing that we did for debtors. We will add 248 and 116, then we subtract it from 100. Whatever the balance we would have, we will write here as at August 31st, balance carried down, and then we will write the difference. When we write the difference, it will have the effect of balancing both the accounts. So the total of both the columns would then add, and whatever balance carried down we had, we will bring it to the next period and write it here as balance brought down and that amount. This means that it has a credit balance. As we can see here, E. Williams, we added both sides here and the difference was 264, which we put it as balance brought down on the next. So here it's kind of like a more of a practice to kind of like close off all the accounts. It is a very simple procedure. We just have to add both the columns, but before writing down the balances we have to see whether they balance. If they balance, that would be the perfect scenario. However, if both sides do not balance, then we have to make it balance by adding a figure to the side which is lower in the amount compared to the other side, which means we would have to subtract the smaller value from the bigger value. When we get that figure, we then carry it down to the next period to bring down as balance brought down. The last concept that we would do in this chapter would be the three column accounts. Traditionally, the way bookkeeping was done was by making T accounts for all accounts and then having a debit and a credit balance by dividing it into two sections. However, Due to the advancement of accounting and bookkeeping and the introduction of computers and Excel worksheets, all the accounting is now done into generally mostly into Excel files. So in that part, it is more easier and convenient to record the debits and credits in columnar form. So and then a person can see what the balance is after each single transaction rather than like in T accounts where you have to close off the balance after a period end which could be a week or a month. So here if we look at K-Tandy and if we look at the account that we have for K-Tandy on the top, here we had two debits and then we had two credits. However, if we were to move this into the columnar format, all of them would be written in the same side, but there would be different columns. So sales would be debited. So instead of being on the debit side, we would put those amount in the debit columns. And bank, instead of putting the bank separately on the credit side, we would put those figures under the credit column. So if we have like 144, then there is the third column which is the balance. And then you have to write here whether it's a debit or a credit. So now because 144 was debit, so the balance of course is going to be 144 debit. Sales of 300 increased the balance to 444 debit. However, a credit payment reduced this to 300 and then a final payment of 300 reduced the balance to 0. So at year end, it's 0. The balance is 0. So it is sort of the same way of balancing the accounts where they have where it was 444 on top. Now it's easier for us to see that the balance at the end is 0, so we don't have to kind of like do any brought down or carried down in this instant. If we look at another example of K night here, we can see that there is a balance remaining of debit balance remaining, which needs to be then taken down to the next period. So this is generally uh, conducted by taking into this format is used by people who have all the accounting on computers and spreadsheets, and generally the bank statements that are received by bank now would be in this account, debit or credit, and then there would be an instantaneous balance which would be indicated by either a credit or debit. So the balance is calculated after every entry. This can be done quite simply when using a computer because the software can automatically calculate it. So that is the concept of three column account double entry system of three column accounts. Just to kind of like sum this up, we need to balance off accounts towards the end to find out how much a person owes us or we owe them, and to carry it forward to the next period. uh, so we just need to kind of like total both the columns and see if there is a difference, and try to balance it by putting the differential amount to make both the sides balance. So please do work on the review question on the activities, and we will discuss whatever questions or queries you might have. Thank you.